There's a young woman, a young racist in Atlanta. She's a racist. And they say, I guess they say that she was after a certain gang and she ended up having an affair with the head of the gang or a gang member. And this is a person that wants to indict me. She's got a lot of problems, but she wants to indict me to try and run for some other office.
A very sweaty former President Donald Trump lashes out at Fani Willis as he stares down, of course, his now fourth indictment involving his attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Of course, Willis is the district attorney for the Fulton County in Georgia. And she has been investigating Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the election for the last 2.5 years. And it appears that the fourth indictment coming from her office is likely going to happen very soon. She had announced about a month ago that she was expecting to announce charges in this case as soon as September. Now, we have some more details for you, including more video, but really what this centers on and the reason why Donald Trump is lashing out there is because he's expecting to be indicted for the fourth time, and he very clearly doesn't like it. So look, before we get to some of the other clips, some background into this case. As you know, Trump has been indicted on a federal level by special counsel Jack Smith, and over the last 2.5 years, Fani Willis has been investigating the same incident, but mostly focusing on his actions in her state. Now, fortunately for her, there's a pretty open and shut, it's not an open and shut case per se, but there is some pretty damning evidence against Donald Trump in this case, especially in regard to how he communicated to election officials in the state of Georgia. Just a quick reminder of that.
The ballots are corrupt, and you're gonna find that they are, and which is totally illegal. It's more illegal for you than it is for them because you know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense. All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Now, Trump refers to that as a perfect phone call. In fact, he says that it's a perfect phone call, much like the perfect phone call he had with Volodymyr Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, which got him impeached, by the way, for the second time. But Cenk, Fani Willis says, that they have accomplished the work. We've been working for 2.5 years. We're ready to go. What are your thoughts on Trump getting indicted for the fourth time, but this time on a state level?
Yeah, so look, there's so many interesting parts of the story. Just to fill out what Anna was saying about the perfect call in Georgia. He said the other call, the Ukraine call, was also perfect, but this one is even more perfect.
More perfect, got it. Okay.
I'm not sure something could be more perfect, but okay, all right, we're gonna go with that one. And guys, American politics has changed so much over the last 7-8 years since Trump has entered it, that it's unrecognizable from 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, if somebody had said that a black prosecutor was racist against white people with no justification or evidence for it, it would have been outrageous, like the biggest outrage in the country, right?
And that was the tame part of his statement.
Yeah, exactly. But then if he had said with no backup at all, I think she's sleeping with a gang member.
But let's keep it real. That's also part of his racist attack against her.
Yeah, of course,
right? 1000%.
Of course.
Completely unfounded, no evidence whatsoever. It doesn't matter. He's trying to discredit her, he's trying to insult her. But what he's really doing, what he doesn't realize is he's showing to the world how incredibly terrified he is. He's lashing out. This is what a scared puppy does. They lash out when they're expecting yet another indictment because of their potential criminality.
So in the old days, mainstream media would have said that saying anything like that would have gotten you immediately basically expelled from either party. But as it turns out, no, Republican voters are totally okay with it. They've had 2,000 chances, and at every turn they say, yeah, nope, I like that, give me more of that. You have no evidence and you just want to accuse a prosecutor of sleeping with gang members because of your racist assumptions? We're here for it. Here for it in spades. He's got like a 50-point lead in the Republican, and nothing moves it. And this stuff doesn't move it down, it moves it up. Democrats still can't say anything about Republicans. So like if a Democrat had said a Republican prosecutor was sleeping with gang members with no evidence at all, there'd be House hearings about it. It would be the biggest scandal. Fox News would talk about it 24/7. They would just laptop. They just repeated 2,000 times as if it was like the worst thing that ever happened. Meanwhile, Trump does it on the regular. He does it every single day. No one bats an eye. This is unreal. So I'll get to the indictment in a second, but.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I thought was interesting, and he was giving that speech in New Hampshire. And usually when he says unhinged things like that, the crowd goes wild. And what stood out to me was, as he was saying those unhinged things, the crowd was pretty much silent. And I'm wondering why that is.
Well, it could be that it's New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a little bit more moderate than some of the other states that he gets those big applause lines in. It could be that a lot of the Republicans now are all over television turning on him, right? So when the race started, it was very mild and tepid. And it was like, Donald Trump is great and wonderful and he shouldn't be arrested over anything. And I'm sure that he won that election, but could I politely disagree and say that I'm slightly better for reasons I can't quite clarify? And now, Chris Christie started this, but now Ron DeSantis is saying, yeah, he definitely lost the election. And people are starting to pile on. Former Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, same state, but a Republican, talking about how Donald Trump is unconscionable and humiliating to the Republican Party. He's like, I never thought the Republican Party would sink this low, that we have this obvious clown, right? This con man trying to defraud America and get rid of an election. It's just unbelievable. So there's tons of that pouring in. So maybe that will take its toll, and maybe it's beginning to take its toll now, but the latest polls we've seen, he still has a gigantic lead, so it could just be the room. So we'll see if it's a trend or if it was just a head fake.
Well, I do think that there's something to be said of, look, finally some of the other Republican candidates are willing to name names and speak out against him, sure. But one other trend that I'm noticing is even some members, I mean, it's sparse, but it's certainly different from what we saw previously. Some members of conservative media are starting to use words like loser to refer to Trump.
100%.
So just yesterday, I was kind of surprised to see Brit Hume of all people, who's a conservative member of the media, was responding to, he quote tweeted one of Charlie Kirk's Trump loyal, he's a Trump fanatic, right? So he put out some video where he's supporting Trump in some way. Brit Hume quote tweets it and basically calls Trump a loser and says, maybe the party doesn't need a person who keeps losing. Maybe we need someone else, right?
Yeah, so look, first of all, Fox News is the leading channel in the right-wing ecosystem that is calling out Trump half the time. But it's startling because you never see it on Fox News before. And now all of a sudden you're seeing the Brit Humes and the Steve Duceys, et cetera, going, well, I mean, and the legal experts saying he's guilty. He did it and he didn't win the election, et cetera. That stuff was totally forbidden earlier. And now that's reaching some percentage of the audience. By the way, among the diehard MAGA guys, Fox News has a lot less of them than Newsmax, OAN, and other media outlets. And in fact, the Fox audience is now kind of split on Donald Trump, which is really interesting. That was in a recent poll. Whereas the rest of right-wing media, and I would make that distinction, I haven't seen the rest of right-wing media break at all. Like Newsmax is just cheerleading for Trump 24/7. OAN, same thing. All Mark Levin, et cetera. You'll know that Trump is actually in trouble if Daily Wire starts to wobble. Like Ben Shapiro doesn't like Donald Trump at all. He's just pretending. And he hides his real opinions. It's all super obvious, right?
To be fair, look, I would largely agree with you. I think that his disdain for Trump runs much deeper than he's allowing his audience to know about.
100%.
However, every once in a while, he can't help himself, and he will just openly talk about how Trump is wrong, or he'll say things that are against Trump. He'll get blowback as a result of that because it's audience capture. I think that's what you're seeing with Newsmax. That's what you're seeing with OAN. To be honest, I think OAN and Newsmax have also made a business calculation to go in the opposite direction of Fox and essentially be the networks that promote Trump and everything he does and basically provide cover for him regardless of the potential criminality. But you also have like National Review, you have Fox News, you have the New York Post here and there.
Yeah.
You know, there are some examples, and I'm very curious to see how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, so National Review has a bunch of never-Trumpers, and they've been consistent, fairly consistent throughout. So they're kind of an outlier in that regard. But all the conservative media that's turning against Trump, at least 50%, is Fox News, New York Post, Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal has had a number of devastating op-eds, all owned by Rupert Murdoch. And the reason that Republican politicians are coming out stronger now is not because the donors told them to. The donors have turned on Trump a while back. But more, I think more specifically, the donors have given them permission to. Like, you are now allowed to criticize Donald Trump. Before,
that's so sad.
You know, he's against the Democrat. No way. We want our goddamn tax cuts. Besides which, most of the donors on the Republican side, like not most, half of the donors on the Republican side like what Trump is saying. The other half really don't. And those guys have given permission to the politicians that they have purchased that you are allowed to criticize them now. And that's why you're seeing it a lot more on air. And so we'll see if that all adds up to actually moving the numbers, because if you don't move the numbers, all of this is totally academic, right? And then now back to the indictment in Georgia. Look, against any other human being, it's a perfectly solid indictment. You got a guy on tape saying, I need 11,780 votes, one more than I need. I mean, it's the most brazen attempt at fraud you've ever seen in your life.
It is.
It's an open and shut case if anybody else does it. With Donald Trump, the bar is so high, right? You have to prove it beyond every doubt of any MAGA dude ever, right? And so that's certainly in the press because they've turned everything into 50-50. In courtrooms, I think that he's going to get a different environment, right? But do I know for sure that they'll win on this case? Of course, there's no way of knowing that for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about Fani Willis's legal strategy here. And this is what she is expected to do, although obviously she has not brought forth the indictment yet, so we don't know for sure. But here's what we know so far based on the reporting. So some experts say that Fani Willis may settle on racketeer, influenced, and corrupt organizations, or RICO charges. In bringing a case against Trump, RICO statutes are typically used for organized crime, but in Georgia it's a little different. The Georgia statute is broader than its federal counterpart and can be geared toward any enterprise, enabling the use of the statute for a wider variety of conduct. I also just want to note that when we're looking at these indictments, again, so far he's been indicted 3 times in 3 separate cases. This would be the 4th indictment. The state indictments brought forth by state prosecutors, I think those cases are more important because let's say in a doomsday scenario where Trump gets elected, he wins the Republican primary and he beats Biden or whoever the Democrat he's running against, he beats that person and becomes president again. He would potentially, I mean, this would be unprecedented, this has never happened before, but there is a theory that he could potentially pardon himself in the federal cases, but he would not have the jurisdiction or the ability to do so when it comes to the state prosecutions.
Yeah, I think Dan Abrams the other night on News Nation, not Newsmax, argued that Willis should drop these charges against him because there's already, Jack Smith is already pursuing similar charges, but that's at the federal level where he can pardon himself. Now you need these state charges as well. But having said that, guys, I want to temper your expectations. So if in the hypothetical that Anna laid out, yeah, he wins the presidency, pardons himself from the federal charges. But what good are the state charges? They're not going to put him in prison while he's president. And theoretically, once he leaves office, then they could pursue imprisoning him. It's not, I mean, it's just not gonna happen. That's point 1. Point 2, and there's, we've gone over it before, there's many different practical reasons why, as to why they wouldn't do it, even though they should do it. But most importantly, if he got reelected, then then the mission's already not accomplished. Because I'm not worried about Donald Trump as a candidate winning. So he has opinions I don't agree with that I think are loathsome. That's not the issue at all. So does Ron DeSantis, so does every other Republican candidate in the race. No, the problem is if Donald Trump wins, he might never leave office and democracy might be gone. So those state charges, after he leaves office, if he ever leaves office, border on irrelevant. So That's depressing, but real. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, well, thanks for that. I guess we'll just move on because what's the point of talking about this?
No, the point is, look, in my opinion, there's one giant point here. I think the people expecting him to go to prison before the presidential race are kidding themselves, right? The giant point is, will the country, most importantly, independents, pay attention to the trials? Will they see the overwhelming evidence against them and wake up, whichever portion of independents and maybe even a tiny percentage of Republicans wake up enough to go, oh, this guy is a criminal. Oh, I didn't realize it was that. Oh my God, he's actually trying to overturn democracy. I didn't realize that. And that's important for the general election, but I mean, ideally, now this is almost too much to wish for, but maybe, and that's exactly what we're talking about, enough Republican voters see it and they go, maybe we don't want this guy as our candidate because it increases our chances of losing. Maybe we go with someone who isn't a total loser and criminal.
Yeah, so look, if you trust polling, and I know you trust polling more than I do, about a third of Trump voters are loyalists, they're not going anywhere. Right,
Yep.
They don't care. They're not paying attention to these indictments. They're not, poring over these documents and paying attention to what's being said. Hold on.
37% to be exact, totally immovable. They say there's nothing that would change their mind.
According to a New York Times Siena College poll, right? But the rest are persuadable. In fact, a significant portion of Republican voters consider themselves never Trumpers. I did a pretty extensive story on this. So these are Republicans who are already against him, right? So I don't know how this is all gonna play out. I do wanna just give you some more detail about what the legal strategy by Willis is here, because again, going back to the potential RICO strategy that she could implement here, doing so would help weave together different elements of the Trump campaign's efforts, connecting a plot carried out by numerous actors. It would also allow numerous conspirators to potentially be charged alongside the former president. I just want to note that the grand jury has also listened to more than that phone call with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. They've listened to 3 separate phone calls that apparently implicate Donald Trump in this case. It's also likely that one of Trump's allies will face perjury charges. Now, RICO charges would also allow prosecutors to sweep in criminal statutes in Georgia that aren't directly tied to elections, which would be used to address broader Trump campaign efforts to access, and this is important, voter machine data in Coffee County, Georgia. This story is so insane, and there's so many moving parts that I actually forgot about this. I'll explain what the Coffee County issue is in just a moment. RICO also allows Willis to sweep in conduct outside of her Fulton County jurisdiction in the broader indictment, such as the Coffee County computer probe and phone calls made by Trump and those in his orbit to election officials residing in other Georgia counties. And so for those who might have missed the Coffee County debacle, months after the election took place, 2 months after the 2020 presidential election, a team of computer experts traveled to South Georgia to copy software and data from voting equipment in an apparent breach of a county election system. They were also greeted outside by the head of the local Republican Party, who apparently was involved in efforts by then President Donald Trump to overturn his election loss. Okay, so you have actual government officials in Georgia who were allegedly in cahoots with Donald Trump. This particular official gave these computer experts access to voting machines and the computer systems so they could download voting data in order to suss out whether there was voter fraud, which, by the way, was a breach of their election systems. And so that's part of this investigation, potentially part of this indictment as well. And so we'll see how it plays out. But as you read the details and you see the mounting legal woes for the former president, you can understand why he's lashing out the way he is. He's issuing threats on Truth Social, saying if you come for me, I'm gonna come for you. He's making all sorts of ridiculous, unfounded allegations and insults toward Fani Willis. This is how he acts when he's backed up into a corner. He seems desperate, and honestly, he does seem worried. That in that video, if you watch the entirety of his speech, he looks terrified.
Yeah, look, he's been terrified his whole life of going bankrupt, being a loser, and certainly going to jail, right? And so he's been scared throughout. That's why I had that crazy prediction that at some point he was just gonna pack up and go home, because he's so insecure, he's so nervous, he's so weak. But they've never had enough pushback against him. The Democrats, just in my opinion, I know he get impeached twice, but it felt like theatrics. I never thought they went after him in a really strong way. Obviously, they lost to him in 2016, nearly lost to him in 2020. So, but now these cases are very real. They're not like Democrats. This is legal. He is in actual trouble, especially if he can't win the election. Then there is a chance he could go to prison, and a coward like Donald Trump is going to be soiling himself thinking about that.
Now, in our members only bonus section today, I want to share with you some of the other parts of his speech that are worth talking about. So that'll be saved for our members. You can become a member if you're not one by going to tyt.com/join. Don't miss it. He goes after Chris Christie in a pretty brutal way. And I can't wait to share those videos with you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.